Okay, so thank you very much, Rosemary. While this workshop marks the end of the grant, I'm very pleased that I'm able to keep working on the issues that we've identified over Powershift. It's been a great 3 years and with some very powerful insights. What I'm going to cover today is some background on Powershift, an indication of what consumers are experiencing in the market now, particularly consumers who are struggling to pay their bills, an overview of the lessons from the Low Income Energy Efficiency Program, or LEAP. I was going to spend a little bit of time of LEAP as Rowan Bedggood, the chair of the Group of Energy Efficiency Researchers in Australia, couldn't make the panel this morning, and just some key findings of the research. So Powershift's longer-term objective can be expressed in pretty simple terms, that people are confident that the actions they take will make their home more comfortable and control their energy bills and usage. That goal is simple, but it remains an aspiration. There's substantial cultural and market change required to achieve it. Through the work of the clever researchers who you're going to hear from in the panel, this research project has produced insights, as I said, that are powerful. It's highlighted a fundamental disconnect in the sector, that people highly value the things that energy provides, light, heat, entertainment and comfort, but we still talk to them about cents per kilowatt. It's demonstrated the diversity of households. We've not reflected carefully enough that the way we use energy in the home is a series of choices about lifestyle made by all the people who live in that home, not just the account holder. It's helped put to bed the long-standing assumption that household customers have no interest in managing their energy bills and usage. And Powershift has underlined that without affordable energy, people can't live in healthy and comfortable homes. That puts their health and well-being at risk, and it contributes to economic and social exclusion. At the beginning of Powershift, our target audience was government and industry, to help them design programs and services that deliver better outcomes for households, and particularly for vulnerable households. The research we've done reaffirmed that was in fact the right approach, that households are ready to engage and ready to act, but they need more useful information and more effective assistance. So the overarching lesson that we've taken from Powershift is that it's given us the opportunity and pathways to improve the design and development of measures to assist households. Powershift was funded through a grant from the Australian Government. It aimed to build an evidence base that allowed us to understand what really works in supporting vulnerable households to manage their bills, other relevant consumer research and opportunities for market-led solutions. And a proportion of the grant also provided seed funding for the Group of Energy Efficiency Researchers Australia and has supported their research activities and conferences over the last 3 years. As Rosemary mentioned, the project's taken place in an environment where electricity prices have risen dramatically, out of step with CPI and wage increases. I'll just skim through this, I think. Where most people aren't so financially secure that their energy bill doesn't matter. Nearly half of Australian households sometimes or always struggle to pay their bills. Our last Energy Consumer Sentiment Survey illustrated how households on lower incomes spend disproportionately more of their income on energy. And that research mirrors the work that's been done by ACOS and the Brotherhood of St Lawrence, which also showed that middle and high income households have been able to manage those price increases better because they can install solar PV or buy more efficient appliances. People have also told us that they're already changing their energy behaviours. They're turning down their heaters, they're switching off lights, and they're using less energy at peak time. Our most recent survey found that only 1/3 of customers are confident that the market is working in their interests. And consumers have told us that while they're confident in their own ability to manage their costs, they can't access effective information or tools to help them. So Powershift began with the evidence base that was built through the Low Income Energy Efficiency Program, or LEAP. LEAP was a substantial trial. The Commonwealth provided grants totalling $56 million to 20 consortia to run pilots. Those 20 pilots trialled 44 different initiatives, as well as a range of communication channels to encourage low-income households to use their energy more efficiently. The pilots ran for 3 years. They all ended on the 30th of June 2016, and they have data on nearly 20,000 households, although it's estimated that the project actually reached over 30,000 people. There were pilots conducted in every state and territory, but only one that was undertaken on a national basis. We commissioned GEAR, the Group of Energy Efficiency Researchers, to do a deep dive into the evidence base to identify what caused consumers to change their behaviour. Overall, most projects reduced average daily household use by between 2 and 12%. There were 44 initiatives trialled. They included combinations of home energy visits, major and minor retrofits, in-home displays, which was about providing feedback to the customer through a display or an app, and energy efficiency information. That was through training, community workshops and brochures or pamphlets. Pilots also trialled digital technologies to engage and communicate with customers. That meant sending text messages and emails, but also included building an online community. Truly innovative approach was the use of gamification, where they used games to engage and educate customers about energy efficiency. Not very surprisingly, one of the highest results was a home energy visit coupled with a major retrofit. That meant that major appliances were chosen, insulation was installed. The targeted training worked very well in one pilot, but that level of impact wasn't replicated in other similar projects. But the digital engagement interests are particularly interesting, as they seem to offer a lot of potential for scaling up quickly. Reduce Your Juice, which Rosemary mentioned, which was a game developed for young renters, that reported reductions of around 11%. The pilots were diverse, and using averages doesn't paint a complete picture of household experiences, but the data does give us an indication of where we can find impact. And the sorts of results we saw through LEAP mirror the kind of results that you would see in some of the international trials that we've also looked at over the life of Powershift. Just as valuable, though, was that LEAP also gave us a range of insights into how consumers thought and responded. And that was new ground. So they went through and looked at the motivators and barriers to action that LEAP participants reported. So the top 5 motivators were that people wanted to understand how to manage their energy. They wanted to reduce their bill. They did respond to rewards for using less. Pilots used extrinsic rewards, used at different stages and in different amounts, and they were usually met with a positive response. But some consumers were also motivated by altruism. It was a community-minded response. And people wanted comfort and recognised improved health and lower stress levels. The top 5 barriers were where participants thought replacing appliances or making modifications to their homes would be unaffordable, where people didn't have a great understanding of what they could do, or, and this is just as important, they didn't know how to access that sort of information, where participants didn't have high levels of trust in industry or government, and where the landlord felt that the benefits of the intervention only flowed to the tenant. It's the split incentive. Low literacy was also an issue there. So GEAR developed where groups of LEAP participants responded in similar ways and mapped how to communicate with those customers through each stage of a program. So they identified 3 segments. These are of vulnerable households and those 3 segments each have different needs and preferences. And I just thought it was worthwhile just stepping through the segmentation framework that they developed. So new to energy included called and Aboriginal consumers, where energy use can be complicated by their geographic location. They're in extreme climate zones or regional and remote areas, as well as cultural background. So energy efficiency can be unfamiliar to this group. So a program needed to allow time to explain the benefits, get the agreement of those participants to engage. They have low levels of trust, so using a trusted intermediary was very important, and building community capacity so that their community, there was lots of elders within their community who they could ask for advice. That also helped encourage behavioural change. These customers preferred face-to-face interaction with key benefits focusing on, key messages focusing on the benefits of energy efficiency. Information here has to be culturally appropriate. The second segment comprised young adults and families. So trust was an issue with this group, but less so than the other two segments. Recruiting these participants was difficult. LEAP projects had to build in extra time and resources, and social media was a really effective channel for getting to them. These households absolutely preferred digital engagement, so they could choose their time. They wanted convenient and responsive engagement, and for some of the projects, they built an online community where participants could talk to each other, and that was also effective in creating that trusted voice. The third segment was stressed about energy. So these were largely elderly consumers. They're price sensitive. They're more likely to ration to an unsafe level. Pilots found some unanticipated obstacles in these programs. For example, replacing a working but inefficient appliance was seen as wasteful. Again, using trusted networks helped with recruitment and engagement. And with these customers particularly, it was important to build an ongoing relationship. They wanted communication that was face-to-face. They preferred it in their home. They liked information as required and didn't like to be overwhelmed with paperwork. While LEAP pilots were focused really about energy efficiency, 19 of the projects also underlined where LEAP participants reported significant co-benefits of being engaged in the program. This is a list of the ones that were reported across the scope of LEAP. There's not sort of comparative data because it wasn't part of the items they were asked to report on, but greater levels of confidence in talking to their retailer, greater self-efficacy, and lower stress and health were all sort of headline issues that were common feedback provided to the LEAP pilots. An important input to our thinking was other relevant consumer behavioural work. I don't have time to go through these in detail, but I just did want to point out the ones that really helped us refine and reframe the way we considered consumer needs and preferences. So that included RMIT's work, that included the gendered nature of energy technologies, as well as the work they've done about how consumers are working with and responding to new energy technology. City Smart's work on household decision making that made clear that informing or educating the account holder is only one part of the equation. The scoping study by the Brattle Group, who interviewed companies that are offering energy services. Their interviews made clear that there aren't any hard market or regulatory barriers to achieving change, but there is significant inertia. It also highlighted the need for new energy services to reduce, not add to complexity. And GEAR's review of energy efficiency projects in other jurisdictions to identify what works and what doesn't. Along with Powershift and our ECSS, that pivoted us away from talking about energy efficiency to talking about how to help customers take the control that they want. So from this body of work, we've identified the following key findings. First, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Households operate in diverse ways. Consumers can have limited ability to engage with the energy market. Physical disability, literacy, language and cultural difficulties can all affect a customer's ability to use or respond to different types of information. They also have different constraints and opportunities depending on the decision they're faced with. So a tenant can switch to a better deal. They can't put solar panels on the roof or install insulation. And the account holder isn't, as I said, the primary decision maker in relation to energy. Telling the account holder how important it is to save energy doesn't give them the tools they need to change the behaviour of their children. Consumers are ready to respond when they're given effective information and tools. So communication that focuses on specific goals works well. If I do this, I save that. The tone of communication is important. It needs to be helpful and supportive, not dictatorial. A two-way conversation was most likely to achieve results. A good understanding of the audience is critical in communicating in a meaningful way. We've developed frameworks through Powershift that will help government and industry tailor information to their audience and choose the right tools to build those communications, which the panel's going to talk about. Third was using a trusted voice will make communications more effective. We can engage with hard-to-reach customers through trusted intermediaries. So that's community and consumer organisations and networks. And this is the point at which we say we'd like to see recommendation 38 in the ACCC retail electricity pricing inquiry implemented. The ACCC agreed that when people need additional assistance, community and consumer organisations were best placed to deliver that help. They've got the knowledge, experience and expertise to understand their client and member needs. So the ACCC recommended that additional resources be provided to those organisations to scale up the services that they actually already are providing. It even suggested a mechanism for allocating those resources, which is to ask the Council and each Council of Social Services and each state or territory to administer a grants fund. We think that's a good idea. A trusted voice too is particularly important in a rapidly changing market. The Brattle Group research underlined that it's not clear that anyone within the current supply chain has a strong incentive to help consumers take control of their energy bills. Fourth, energy is critical to household health and wellbeing. A key lesson of LEAP was that no amount of information or education helps if people's houses are leaking heat or they're too cold or too hot. Poor energy performing homes result in higher energy bills and a whole range of poor health outcomes. Improved thermal comfort is the single most significant health and wellbeing benefit that helps reduce mortality and chronic disease. We've been working with other consumer organisations to build a strong consumer voice to improve the energy performance standards of housing, including through the Housing Summit that we hosted last year. And finally, capturing the range of benefits. We've historically measured the impact of energy efficiency programs on how much energy was saved, whether the bill reduced or whether there was fewer emissions. Powershift's made clear that we've underestimated the benefits, so that there's a robust and persuasive evidence base building that indicates that health and wellbeing impacts are in fact perhaps greater. And finally, thank you. Now, this was an effect I hadn't anticipated was going to survive. So bear with me, because you're about to see how poor my PowerPoint skills are. So I wanted to say thanks to all those who've contributed to Powershift over the last 3 years. It really has taken a village. So Rosemary and Lynn and ECA, the researchers that we've worked with, Rowan and Rebecca in GEAR, Marianne and Mayella in Assel Allen, Chris and Andrew in 89 Degrees East, Jason and Lois in Australian Energy Foundation, Neil in the Brattle Group, our project reference group, the research community, Yolandi, Larissa, Neil, and last but very much not least, our colleagues in the Department of Environment and Energy, whose support and guidance have been very useful over the last 3 years. Thank you very much.